Welcome to my channel. I am Jonah MacTavish-Slaton, and today I want to look at the history of Clan MacTavish, which is my family heritage. This is through my maternal side, through my grandfather, and I want to explore the roots of this clan and this family and look at the origins of MacTavish. And also look at the migration routes from Ulster in Ireland to Argyll in Scotland during the time of the Kingdom of Dalriada. And I'm going to read, before that, I'm going to give you a short history of Clan MacTavish. Now, this is written by my good friend Patrick Thompson, who lives in Texas as well. This is copyrighted by Patrick Thompson and also Clan MacTavish. I'll also be looking at a few maps that Patrick has made. Also, I will be looking at the book he wrote for the clan called The History of Clan MacTavish. This is all copyrighted by Patrick Thompson as well as Clan MacTavish. I want to give credit where credit is due and thank Patrick. I don't know if there's any other MacTavish or Thompson or anyone else connected to the clan and the family that has did more research and spent more time and effort of putting together the history of our family. So, you know, a big shout out to Patrick. Thank you for all this and making it possible for us to look at our family history. So let's dig into it and start. We're going to do a brief history of Clan MacTavish by Patrick Thompson. I'm not going to read it word for word or read all of it. I just want to cover the high points that you see on your screen. So the ancient Gaelic name of MacTavish is from Irish Gaeilge. And it's, as you see on the screen, or if you can see, if you're on your PC, you may be able to view it. If you're looking at your iPhone or Android phone, your smartphone or whatever, you probably won't be able to read any of this. So this is much better viewed on a PC. But without further ado, let's get started. As I said, this is an ancient Gaelic name, and it is the son of the devotee of Saint Thomas. So MacTavish, you know, it's just son of Thomas. Thomas was the patron saint of these people that were living in Donegal, and these saintly clansmen came to the Scottish Dalriada in ancient Alba. We're not going to go too much into that history, but like I said, the name MacTavish stems from the Pictish Gaelic Tavis, and in Scottish it's Thomas. The Irish Pictish tribe of the Kilnadulch of Donegal, Ireland. Now, I'm going to probably butcher a lot of the pronunciations, so forgive me. I'm a Texan. I talk with this southern drawl, and so I'm not as apt to be able to enunciate correctly a lot of this ancient Scottish Gaelic and Irish Gaelic words. So forgive me if I mispronounce them, but hopefully you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to convey. So the Pictish MacTavishes were related by marriage to the people of Dalriada, the so-called Scots. Tavis More the Great was born to Colum Malmouth, a nephew of Paul Bockelson called Sporran the Purse Keeper. He was the sheriff of Skye and landowner in Lochal. Colum married a daughter of Sween Red of Castle Sween. This was the Lord and Taoiseach of Kintyre and Knapdale. Now, Malmouth secondly married a niece that would have a son called Duncan, called Gilsberg, as service of the bishop from Room Clancampbell Springs of King Alexander. Now, there's been so much history of Clan MacTavish written by the Campbells, and I think Patrick does a great job in his book pointing out that MacTavish is not from a Campbell. MacTavish is much older than Clan Campbell, and Tavish's family goes back all the way from early beginnings of Dalriada, from the Boer kings over in Ireland. So the Campbells and the MacTavish would be cousins. So they spring from the same paternal line, but they are not the same clan. Never, they were never the same clan. And over the years, these people would marry each other. You go to any of the graveyards in Argyll, and you will see MacTavishes and Campbells intermarried, along with MacDougals, McCollums, and many other people of that region. So even in my family line, that we would have the later MacTavishes marrying into Campbells, centuries later. So to get that cleared out, we're going to keep going. The origin of the two brothers. So this guy would, his name is Colum Malmouth, and he would be married to the daughter of Sween. Now, Sween the Red is a very, very important figure. He built the oldest castle in Scotland. And he must have been very powerful to hold those titles and to build such a large castle. Because at the time he built this castle, the Norman influence with David had just arrived in Scotland. So, we have, the De Bruces and the Montgomerys and the St. Clairs and all these people, the Clemens and all these people that were coming up with King David that brought in this Norman influence. And with that, Norman feudalism, with that, the usage of surnames, instead of, doing the Mac, it would end up, the clan would take pretty much the last individual at this time, the father of their clan, they would take his name and it would just stick. This was brought in by the Normans, and they also brought in castle building. And incredibly, this early on, we're talking about the late 1100s, Sween the Red would build this castle, one of the oldest in Scotland, if not the oldest. And his daughter is a product of his marriage to the King of the Isles' daughter. So Sween the Red married this woman who was the daughter, a princess of the King of the Isles, this Norse woman, and they would produce a daughter. This daughter would marry would be married to Colum. From this marriage, you would have two brothers and two clans that were founded. And the brothers are Ivar and Tavis, which would be the founders of Clan MacIvor and Clan MacTavish. These guys are noted at being distinguished in the art of war and attributed with taking lands in Cowell from the ancestor of the Lamonts, or Clan MacHic. And this is from the Highland Papers. Now, in Kilmartin Church, if you saw my other video where I go around looking at these areas associated with my family and the MacTavishes, you know that I showed a lot of pictures of Kilmartin Church, because in that graveyard is several MacTavishes. And going from this, it says in the Kilmartin churchyard is a weathered and ancient moss-covered gravestone with etched etchworn that is lettered hard to decipher, but it is considered to be the grave of Tavis More, brother of Ivar. And also there's other ones called, an ancient stone called the MacTavish Chief Stone. It is etched effigy of a Hamilton mail-clad warrior with a broadsword with the letters MacTavish. So this is a report of the graves of Iverson Ivar in the Kilmartin churchyard. Comes from account of Campbell, who has a MacIvor maternal line. So that's kind of the storyline of where the MacTavishes came from, and they came from this marriage of Colum Malmouth to the daughter of Sween Red, which produces Tavish, which would turn into Clan MacTavish in the family. Now we're going to dig into a more deeper sense, and for this we're going to look at what we would consider the origins of the very first people of MacTavish. So here is a map of the Lost Kingdom of Gil and Igil, the Cynal ancestors of Clan MacTavish. Thanks for, I believe Patrick is the one that created this map for Clan MacTavish. Yep, it says right here, created by Patrick Thompson. So on this map, as you can see, to your left and up is the Horn Head. This is in Ulster. This is in Ireland. This is in Donegal. And so there's Horn Head. And so in between a couple of peninsulas is what they call Sheep Haven Bay. Now, I've been to this area several times. Murder Hoe Beach is very close to this area, and that's really one of the most famous spots for visitors to this region. But going back to this map, we got these squares are towns. So what you see, the first town is Dunfanaghy. Dunfanaghy, there was a fort of, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but Wundacoddy, perhaps Wundacoddy, and this is the canal, and this is going to be the an area where the power base of part of the MacTavish family would be. But we see a Rath, which is a ring fort. We see a couple of these, and one is Dooney's Castle, Castle Dun. Another one is the Fort of the Fenians. So this is really incredible. And like I said, this Castle Nelfin, which is the Fort of the Fenians, would be a MacTavish fort. Now, we wouldn't call them MacTavish this time. They're the Boar Kings. These are the kings of Rusgill or Oldgill and Urgill. So this is the territory. This is the base. This is the people, the genetic people. These Irish Picts and Irish Gaels living in this area, and this kingdom would stretch through this whole area. Now, something happened that would force these people to move, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if you want to know where MacTavishes originated, this would be around probably all the way up until maybe possibly the late 500s to the early 600s. The family of the MacTavish would be in this area on both sides of Sheep Haven Bay there in Donegal. And their primary fortress of the king, one of them would be the Fort of the Fenians. So the MacTavish family are truly the most Irish of a sense because of this location. Now, this area becomes and we're going to get to this later, but they're descendants of Conn of 100 Battles. And I know you can read the Annals of the Four Masters and the many sagas of Ireland. But one thing to point out is that there are two major groups in the north. We're talking about in Ulster and more in the central to the north of Ireland. And there's two major kingships or royal families that would emerge. One would be the descendants of Conn of 100 Battles. The other one would be Niall of the Nine Hostages. And that's where you get the old Niall. And you have the northern old Niall and the southern old Niall. So perhaps, and not to go into it too deep, but these are the MacTavish people living over here in Donegal at the Fort of the Fenians are descendants of Conn of 100 Battles. Now, these people would be at war at many times with Niall of the Nine Hostages, the people that would descend from his lineage. And so at one point, these people left this region, and possibly economics played into it, but more importantly, it was politics and war. So this Boar king would abdicate his kingdom and would head to Antrim. So he's, and this is hypothetical probably, but I would believe this individual probably ended up in Antrim. And that is the Dalriada side of, it's the Irish side of Dalriada. It's in Antrim. But eventually, this family would end up in the Scottish side of Dalriada, which is in Argyll. And we're going to take a look at, let's see here. We're going to take a look at the migration from that. So as I said, it is probably due to this warfare that would cause the family there in Tyrconnell or Donegal to leave. I'm not sure if you can see it. If you're on the PC, you can see my cursor right here, the magnifying glass. This is where they would be at, the Fort of the Fenians. And then they would go. Now, we don't know for certain if they went straight over or if they went through land and came to Antrim here. So if you look at Ireland and you go to your top right side of Ireland, the northeast side of Ireland, that is Antrim. Now, Antrim in this corner, probably all the way down to County Down, all the way up to this region in right here where Derry is, close to Derry. This would be Antrim, and this is the area of Dalriada in Ireland. So the family's right here, and these are the migrational paths from their origin roots. So the family is here, and there's a couple of things. They could have went through the land and down what is now through Fermanagh, Derry, into Antrim, and then up. Or they could have took a direct route and came via the sea. So this right here is called the Sea of the Hebrides. And right here's the Irish Sea. So if they came into Antrim, they would have passed through part of the Irish Sea up into Argyll. Or if they didn't go land-based to Dalriada here, then they took a trip over, and now we're right here more on the left side of Ireland, over in Donegal. And so they would have came up straight through the Sea of the Hebrides, and from that point would have came around and landed in Knapdale. And some would have ended up in Iona and Mull and so forth. But the main part of the MacTavish family would end up in Knapdale. Now this is in Argyll, and this whole area that you see all the red lines kind of coming out of and pointing to right here in Knapdale. Now this is Argyll, and this is to be the power base of the Kingdom of Dalriada. At this point, when the MacTavishes land in Argyll, land in Dalriada, the Scottish side of Dalriada, the power base of the Scots, the Irish Scots, are going to be based. These are Gaelic people and probably a Pictish Irish people, but it's going to be based. The power base is based in Duned. As I said in my other video, the power base is in Duned, and this is where Kenneth MacAlpin, who would be the first king of the Picts, that was a Gaelic king, but through his mother was the grandson of a Pictish king. Well, it would be this man that would move the power base of Dalriada and would go across, back over toward Glasgow and Stirling and all that area. He's going to move the power base of his power base over, which we'll see in other videos leaves a power vacuum in Argyll for many centuries. But when the MacTavish arrive in Knapdale, now we're calling them MacTavish, but they're not really truly MacTavish at this point, but they are the descendants of the Boer kings. So when these are Irish, Pictish, Gaelic people, they're royal, they bring their entourage, they land right there in Argyll, they're probably going to marry into the royal family of Dalriada. And the reason why we know this is because, first of all, they're of royalty themselves. And this kingdom might have been allied and aligned with the Irish Dalriada side in Antrim. And this might have been the reason why they had to leave Ireland, because of the O'Neill and dominance over the rest of Ulster. So this could be very well why they left, because of their alliance. And because of that alliance, they were pitted on the wrong side of history, and they would go to the Scottish side of Dalriada. And we would see quickly that the Irish side of Dalriada would disappear, and it would be only located in Argyll. So they arrive in Argyll, they're in Knapdale, they're given land. Now, the incredible thing is they're right close to Duned Fortress. This is the fort of the Kingdom of Dalriada. This is the fortress of the Gaels from Ireland. And to be that close in proximity to the Dalriada kingship and power base, and to be given land there, was purely because they were of royal descent. They were these Boer kings from Donegal over in Ireland. And by that, a son would probably marry a daughter of one of these Scottish Gaelic kings, would be married to a princess. And this would solidify their power. The fact that they are known as their chiefly line and position as the MacTavish of Dunawdry, which means the seat or fortress of the High King, To be given such a title and such a prized land in Argyll shows the significance of this family. Now, there's a couple other things I wanted to point out. One of the things I want to point out is the fact that they bring in the kennel, this clanship. We don't know exactly when the clan system arrived in Scotland. But I would predict that the early Gaels that came into Scotland from Ireland did not bring the clan system right off the bat. They'd been going back and forth probably since 100, 200 AD. By 300 AD, we start seeing the formations of the kingdom of Dalriada. But I think that probably sometime in the 5th and 6th centuries, that these other waves of people that would come in would bring more of the clan system. And the reason why is because the very system that we find in Donegal with in Ilgirl and Gil, what we find with that is the very foundation of this royal family line that arrives in Argyll. We see that this is what really springs the clans. So all clans in Scotland could be traced back from the arrival of these people in Ulster after the kingdom of Dalriada is already gone, that these other people would come in. Now, this is why I believe this, because not long after this, we would see the power base of Dalriada be moved more into mainland Scotland, and their king would become the king of the Picts, as we said, through his mother's line. He's the grandson of the king of the Picts, and it would combine the Pictish and Dalriadian kingships together. And then his sons would be known as the kings of the Picts, and then later they would do away with this idea of Picts and would call themselves the kings of Alba. Alba is the ancient Gaelic name of Scotland. And eventually they would take on quickly the name Scot. This is very interesting because what happens in the Highlands in the west of Scotland is a power vacuum and a much larger land base. So at this time, the royal connections are no longer there among these groups of people, and they have a lot of autonomy. They have a lot of self-preservation, self-rule, and they would really be much out of the reaches of the kings of Scotland for a long, long time. They would fall under the full influence and jurisdiction at times of the Norse, but this clanship would replace these royal nobility families, and they would produce the clans, and very much like the clans of Ireland. But see, the clans of Ireland disappeared. Now they've reappeared here there in Scotland. And this would give these families their power base, their structures, and their identity. But it was more of land ownership and inheritance, and that was the importance about the clan. And this is what we see. So MacTavish may be one of the earliest clans in the history of Scotland. Now, we know that there is a claimant to that. I think Clan Robertson or another clan is the oldest clan in Scotland. I don't believe that at all. I think that's just, it may be the oldest documented clan as far as on paperwork, but I don't believe that that's the oldest clan. It could be one of the oldest clans, and if you go to their Gaelic name. But I believe that if you look at when these clans arrived in Scotland from Ireland, and you got to understand that the clans just become this surnamical membership. So they're really, before that, they existed. They just didn't exist in name rights. Now, with the arrival with surnames and the Normans in the late 1100s and the early 1200s, you would see now the naming of the clans. So there was never a clan name per se before this. It was just this family, because you would have the Mac of the Mac of the Mac, and in Ireland you would have the Mac and the O. And it would just change, so you had this constant change. The only thing that we know for truth is the royal families and high nobility families, and those names would be submitted. So this is the migrational route, and primarily what we are looking at is from Donegal, an area, we call it the Fort of the Fenians. It's right close to Sheephaven Bay. They come across the Sea of the Hebrides, arrive in Argyll, settle in Knapdale. They are given the lands of Dunodry. They are descendants of Irish kings, the Boer kings. That's going to be their symbol. And they become integrated with the kingdom of Dalriada, and probably, more than likely, they are married into the princely line of that, and they would from that point on, when Kenneth MacAlpin moved the power structure out of Argyll into more central Scotland, this family probably would have been one of the most powerful families in the west of Scotland in the Highlands. So we're going to go back, and so that's the origin, and that's the migration route. Now, they would, from that point, the MacTavishes would spread. One of the, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to that. My PC is really running slow today. I'm going to go back to that page really quick. So, one more thing. So the MacTavishes would leave Argyll. Now, that's their power base, and that's where they ended up. There would be some in Alna and Mull, but the main group of the MacTavish would end up in Argyll and Knapdale. Now, they would spread out, and some would end up in Inverness, some would end up in Aberdeen, some would end up in Perth, some would end up in Stirling, Glasgow, even Edinburgh, and, but most of these people that left, most of them would end up in and around this central area. We're talking about Perth, Stirling, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Larnac. And then in Dumfries. Now there are a lot of MacTavishes and Thompsons in Dumfries. And I've said this so many times, but if you're new to it, your MacTavish just means son of Thomas. Mac is son, Tavish is Thomas. Thompson, well, that's pretty easily explainable if you're an English speaker. Thompson is just Thomas's son. Okay, very very easy, very simple. Now the MacTavish people their name would change. So as the Gaelic language of the Scots was used less and less, so typically the Highlander MacTavishes would hang on to their name more, and those people that migrated or immigrated out of Western Scotland and the Highlands and ended up in Canada and Australia and the United States, most of these people would end up keeping the name MacTavish. However, the people that lived around that didn't immigrate, that stayed around Argyll and then maybe moved down into the Glasgow area or Inverness, they kept their name MacTavish. But the people that would go into Lanark and Dumfries and Edinburgh, most of these people, even Glasgow, would change. Their name really wouldn't change. It was just the language changed. So don't think of it that the MacTavish name changed ever. What would happen is that the MacTavish name would be the language of the people. So when you see Thompsons, these are MacTavish for the most part. Now there is another group of Thompsons in Scotland that have nothing to do with Clan MacTavish. These Thompsons were never Gaelicized. They were never part of a Highland clan. They never had their name translated from Scottish Gaelic into English. This is a different people, okay? This is a different family. But the Thompsons, their name changed primarily because they began speaking a different language. In the lowlands of Scotland and even around Glasgow and Edinburgh, there started being less and less people that spoke Scottish Gaelic, and more people began speaking English. And so by that necessity, if you're a Scottish Gaelic speaker and your name is son of Thomas, then eventually as you're speaking, you would say it in English, Thomas's son, Thompson. So that's an easy explanation. There would be a few, and especially some in my family line, that would change the name from MacTavish to Thompson, but it would be due to the idea that Gaelic people in Ireland would be looked down on. And I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but anyways, and then you would see other names such as Cavish, and this is just really the spelling when it was written down would be written down by different people. They would some of it, the Macs would go from MAC to MC. Some of it would just drop the Macs. In particular, my family that left Knapdale as MacTavishes and would end up down in Lanark, and from Lanark they would end up, I don't know, I think they would end up in Dumfries, and then from Dumfries they would end up in they would end up in Glasgow, and some of the family would end up in Lanark, and then I don't know which ones per se. It seems like they were living in several different places. But when they left Knapdale and Argyll and went to Glasgow, they also lived around the Larnac area. These people in my family line would leave, these MacTavishes would leave this area and would end up going to Antrim over in Ireland and Ulster. So it's a circle. As you see, ancient-wise, they started out, if you're looking to the left, they started out over here on the left, and they came out of Donegal, and they went up into Argyll in Scotland, and then they went down to Glasgow, they went to Lanark, and then they swept back over into Antrim. And they weren't really back in Ireland for too long, maybe 2 generations. Then they ended up in the United States. So we're going to go back out and take a look at, so we see where the name came from. So this is this name stems from an Irish Gaelic name that would be translated into English, but not quite. So MacTavish is actually the anglicized word for it. But it never, it's like this intermediate word for the family. So if you want to go all the way anglicized, you would go to Thompson or Thomason. If you want to be kind of like take the name itself and just put an English flavor on it, it would be MacTavish. And the old one would be MacGilly Thomas. But so that's our namesake. This is where we were from, our origins in Donegal, and that was the migration route. Now we want to look at the royal pedigree in the Kennel na Ducks. Now, I'm probably saying it wrong, but the Kennel is like this family, and there's 2 different kennels and words for that. But it's this family found there in Donegal, but at the time it was something else. But anyways, this whole thing is actually part of the clan system that would come into Scotland. So going back, we're going to look at this royal lineage, this pedigree table, real quickly. And this was copyrighted by Clan MacTavish, and it is expert from Patrick Thomas's. It's actually copyrighted to Patrick. Here we go. First, we're going to look at Conall Clubin. Conall Clubin is the king of Tyrconnell. Now, Tyrconnell is of whom the Kennel descend from, Con of the 100 Battles. They are not from Nell of the 9 Hostages, are the dynastic Ulnils who later conquered much of Northern Ireland. As I said, this is probably one of the reasons why this royal family will leave. The ancestry of these northern tribes and their kings is proclaimed in the Chronicle Scrotum as belonging to the Silcun race of Con, not the Ulnil. The Ulnil link appears as a synthetic fabrication of the Ulnil historians in the 13th century, who rewrote parts of the Irish annals to their advantage. The Chronicle Scrotum, it seems to have been overlooked and has retained its original nature. Conall Clubin's kindred, the Cnill Conall, and its branches are Picts, Irish Clunthin, and not Celtic Gaels related to Nall of the 9 Hostages, although some consider the Picts as a Celtic people. Note, the Clunthin Irish Picts are believed to have invaded Ireland in the 8th century BC. They are equated to be the tribes of Dalnadarada or Dalneric. I can't say these words, man. These are old, ancient Gaelic words, as well as the Logos of Venture. So these people are considered Picts, but they're equated to the Picts. But I think over time there'd be a lot of differences between them, and absolutely that these Picts found in Ireland would have been Gallicized by the time they made it to the Kingdom of Dalradio. Saint Columba was of this Corinthi of Dalrata, and he was baptized in Ireland at what is now called Temple Douglas by a Pictish priest, and afterwards became Saint Columba's foster father and tutor. Now, understand this, Saint Columba was the man that would bring Christianity to Ireland. When Columba visited King Brodmach, the High King of Alba, in 565, he took along his two best friends, Comgall and Kennedy, and he deduces both of them as Irish Picts and would have spoken a P-Celtic language. The Silkanen and the Kinel in its branches are Pictish, not Gaels or Anils. And so, but you understand that's their origins, I believe, by the time of the 500s, 600s, that because close proximity, that there would have been a lot of intermarriages, especially people of high nobility and royalty, because that's the way of life. To have peace, have alliances, this is what would happen. So in the Chronicon Sacrorum, it says the battle of Alamhan between Murdoch, son of Bran, king of Alakan, and Fergal, son of Malthwin, king of Uran, king on the 3rd of the Ides of December, the 6th Fura. The number of the Silkian who went to the battle of Amhan was 20,000. These are the kings of the race of the Silkian who were slain in battle. Fergal, son of Malthwin, king of Uran, with 160 of his bodyguard. Conall Main, king of Kinel Kerbre, and Furbach, king of Kinel Bacheni, and Fergal, how do you say this? And Fergal, son of Achlath Lemon, king of Tamanaka, and you get it. So these, they had a son of Ur, the king of Gil, and Ingral are the descendants of Malfred. These are the kings of the north. Here are the kings of the O'Neill. So you have Khan of 100 battles, and you have Nall of the 9 hostages. So this is just showing the difference between the two. And so the Boer kings found there are going to be of this Pictish seed that came into Ireland around 800 BC. So the next thing I'm going to look at is at Patrick's book, to look at the royal connections. This is from chapter 3. And I find this very, very interesting because this is going to include some of this historical thing. When you think of Connacht in the west of Ireland, you look at the province of Connacht, which you have Galway and these other counties. They take their name from Con, and you get this idea of Con's half of Ireland. So what we have here, and we're going to look at notables for Ireland, and we look at King Con. Con of 100 battles is he appears to be related, at least traditionally, to Finn MacCool. He was the High King in Ireland during the 2nd century. Historically, Con appears to be a descendant of the Gaulish or Abernerian Picts or Corinthi people. So there you have it. Notably, Con of 100 battles is related to Finn MacCool. Leth Quinn as Con's half is Leth is as half. So Leth Quinn is Con's half, roughly the northern half of Ireland, which Con and his descendants rule under the dynastic O'Neills conquered much of Ireland between the 4th and 7th centuries. And in my opinion, this is why the kings of Urgel would leave the Boer kings, my family. Leaf Hall is we're talking about the crown stone of the Pictish royal of Tara. It was said to moan or sing when the rightful king stood up on it, and it sang out for Con of the 100 battles. And then we're looking at Nall of the 9 hostages, Nall More the Great. His descendants took control of the better portion of Ireland, especially the north. He appears to be a Gael, and he's probably a mix of different people. Conall Colban traditionally is mistaken as the king, as a son of the king of the Nall, the non-hostages, but he's not. He is descended from King Con. So, and then now we're going to get into something that's very interesting, because Clan Colla, and you talk about the Children of the Mist in Ariel and the Highlands. Clan Colla. So this is founded by 3 brothers. A dominant character, let's see here. So it's by 3 brothers, and here we are. A dominant character is King. The dominant of the one is Colla Us, and he's the High King. And Aid is or Ave is otherwise Kalaman, and then Murdoch is known as Kala de Kurak. And that's kind of the three brothers, the three branches. And we're going to go into... there's one thing I hate about Kindle. Now, I bought this book, and if you're from the Clan MacTavish, or you're one of the descendant of Clan MacTavish, or even through some of the sects such as Cash or Cavish or Thompson or Thomason, buy this book. I don't think you can get it in hard copy anymore, but do buy the book. You can get it on Kindle, and it's a great book to have. I bought it, and I've got it on my Kindle. Right now I'm reading off my PC in it. And we're on the third chapter of the history of Clan MacTavish. So Canal means kindred. Canal is kindred. And a Canal is a kin group wider than a clan, claiming descent from a main stem. It includes assimilated tribes, and all clans come from these Canals. Now, Canal... Connell Connell is the kindred of King Connell Clomburn. So, and this is part of that lineage. And then you look at the kingdom of Tyrconnell, or Tyrconnell. Tyrconnell is the kingdom founded by Connell Clomburn, which is roughly the county of Donegal in Ireland. So the kingdom of Tyrconnell is our power base for our family. This is where our earliest ancestors were. And from this, you have the Kinnell Erwin. Erwin is the only brother of Connell Clomburn. And then you have the Kinnell Ndui. And it's Ndui. It's a branch of the Kinnell Connell. And they're known as the Wendaki or Wendukati Picts. And this is, so we're breaking it down from this Kinnell, which is this wide kinship group where clans come from. And then from this we have Kinnell Connell, which is the kindred of King Colban, which was the king of the king. This is the king of the kingdom of Tyrconnell, and as you can see, it's named after him. And from there, you would have a branch of people called the Kinnell Dewey, and from there, or Kinnell Dewey, and from there you would have this branch of Kinnell Connell and Fergus Kinnefada, and other that would be considered the Wendukati Picts. And from this, you would get MacGilly Samus, and it is known as the Orc clan, or Clan Tavish, and then Clan MacTavish. So the Wendukati, or the Kanani, I don't, Patrick probably knows how to spell these or pronounce these. I have no idea. But anyways, this is tribe of Picts in Northern Ireland, noted in the 2nd century by Ptolemy, called the Kinnell Ndui in the Irish Annals. And then we talk about the Picts, the Crew Nia. The Crew Nia, or the Irish Picts related to the Picts of Scotland. What they call themselves is really unknown. They are also known as the Pitini, or the Painted People. They're among the earliest settlers of Ireland and Scotland, and the original Scottish Highlanders. The Picts were undoubtedly Gaulish Iberian tribes who fought the Romans on the continent and settled over the Iberian Peninsula, Spain. These segmented tribes ventured to both Ireland and Scotland over hundreds of years. The ancientness of the Picts, as far as confederations with other tribes is concerned, is debatable, but they are connected between the north of Ireland and Iona in Scotland. So these people would come from, mainly the area known as southern France and probably northern Spain. And they were both found in Iberia and in Gaul. and this would be the Picts, the Celtic people that came over. The next group of people that would come over is the Gaels. They were the Milesians, the sons of soldiers of Spain. They settled in Ireland after the Crunia, and later pushed into Scotland. They seem to have come after those tribes, given the distinction of the Picts, but they're likely related to the Picts themselves, but not confederated with them. And so we do know that these Picts and Gaels would not only mix in Ireland, they would also mix in Scotland. Now, above we mentioned Fergus, Kinfada, and what this is. We go to Fergus Kinfada or whatever. He's known as long-headed and dependent on interpretation, and he was the son of Conall Culban. He was the true prince of Ireland, and he wed the daughter of Lorne MacEirc, a prince and king of Dalriada. So this is what you have. You have this guy named Fergus, and Fergus would marry. He was, like I said, he was the son of the king of Tyrconnell, and he was the Prince of Ireland, or this section of Ireland. He went on to marry a princess of Dalriada, and that begins this connection. From there, we're going to take a look at, if it'll load. Give me 1 second. I apologize. All right. So we're going to look at what we call the Nadui, and which has a meaning of the oak. So when you look at Derry and the connection to oak, the tree, and Derry, you see that this Nadui, it's the same language. My good friend Brendan Kane, he lives over in Ireland, over in Rusmuck. I believe he still lives there. He would be appreciation of this, as this word, Nadui, dairy comes from it, and the meaning of the oak, and alias of Fergus Kinfada. He founded the Kinal Nadui and the race and kingdom of the Dal Anradia. So they share a common ancestor between these two kingdoms. We look at Dal Aradi, and it's an Irish kingdom, and the tribal people associated with the Picts, and commonly thought to consist mainly of the Irish counties of Antrim and Down. These people settled in Scotland, and St. Columba was a prince of this tribe. And you would get from what you get from this is the kingdom of Dalriada. And it's this people of northeastern Ireland and later western Scotland and the Isles, and then later it would lose its hold over Ireland and would just be found in Scotland. It is considered distinct from the what we call the Nadaria, but historically appears to be a branch of that. So they're the eponymous, they're the true beginning of the Scots. Saint Columcille or Saint Columba is a grandson of Fergus, this guy that started that kingdom, and he founded the kingdom of Iona. Now, it is historically thought that that Saint Columba might have been born in Tyrconnell, which is now Donegal, but we don't really know that. He's the grandson of that, founded the island abbacy of Iona, and his Christian ministry involved the conversion of the Scottish Picts. He was a true Pictish prince of Ireland, and his missionary, like I said, includes the Scottish borders as well. Now, we go to the Fianna, named for Finn McCool, was a warrior of the militia of the Northern Ireland, found in early Brehon laws, Irish laws. They consisted of landless young men, or even women, mostly unmarried, and often young nobles who had not yet come into their inheritance or position. They were the ones that would build the raths or the ring forts that still exist. And within these of these Finns or Fianna peoples, you see these ring forts all over Ireland, especially in this area where the Boer kings are found, the people of MacTavish. So Gall and Erigall is the relative and descendants of the warlord Finn McCool, each having a mount named after him, and is presently named in the peninsulas of Rossgill and Old Errigill, or Hornhead, in County Donegal. And it brings us to the kingdom of Gall and Erigall, variously known as Gil, Errigill, Rossgill, Ross Errigill, and so forth, which were ruled by the kings of the Wendicati, which is the Picts. Noted are the McGill-Thomas chiefs. They're the sub-rulers who became the MacTavishes in both Ireland and Scotland. This Irish kingdom composed of the presently named peninsula of Rossgill and Hornhead in northern county Donegal in Ireland. And the kings appear as the descendants of Finn, Gall, and Erigall and Conn. We go down also into the Uruk, or the Uruk Dui. This guy was the Uruk king of Gil and Ergill. The literal meaning of Uruk in Irish Gaelic is the boar, but also translates to the son of the king. Hence, Uruk is the boar king and the son of the king. He would have this totem that would bear the boar's head, or the boar. And this is the ancestor of Clan MacTavish, or Clan Tavish. Uruk is the undoubtedly source of the boar's head crest that is still borne by the chiefs of Clan MacTavish. Uruk is the ancestor of Nada, and who was the last inaugurated boar king of Gil and Ergill. And then we go down to a person called Lorne the Great. He was the son of Urk, so he was Lorne the Great MacUrk. He was the king of Dalriada and an ancestor of King Kenneth MacAlpin of Alban. So through his lineage as the king of Dalriada, Kenneth MacAlpin, who would become the king of the Picts, king of Alba, this is the starting, one of the early starting lines. And the district of Lorne in Argyll is named after him. Lorne's daughter, Urca, married Dewey, which is Fergus Kinfada, and their son, whose name is Fedlem, and his wife Ethanine were the parents of St. Columba. Like I said, Urk translates to boar. The Old Neil, the collective name for the dynastic families sprung from Null of the Nine Hostages, and like I said, we've shown that this is two dynastic families, one from Conn of the 100 Battles, one from Null of the Nine Hostages. Now, it is true that these people in today's time, and even in that time, probably these Gaels and Picts there would probably been a lot of intermarriage through, so there was probably many bloodlines of Gaels into Pictish territory and many Pictish bloodlines into Gaelic territory in the north of Ireland. We're going to talk about Old Dwyn, and Dermot is this handsome mythical hero from Irish tales who ran away from the warlord Finn McCool's Bethrold and slew the wild boar, but paid with his life. So in this Ulster myth, he is said to have been had been a companion to Finn, and but there's that's a different story. But anyways, let's go over to Fergus Moore. Fergus Moore is very important to the kingdom of Alba and Dalriada history, and he is called Fergus the Great, and he was the son of MacUrk. He's the king of Scottish Dalriada and brother of Lorne Moore, the other king of Dalriada, and he is an ancestor of Kenneth MacAlpin. And then we're going to go on to the next page. That is a guy by the name of Godfrey MacFergus. He's the prince of Earl and a Taoiseach of the Isles, who is said to have died in 853 AD. Also a relative of Fergus Moore MacUrk and Lorne MacUrk, the kings of Dalriada. So, and then we're going to get down to here, and the Clan Ranald and Clan Donald clans are Norse in origin. They were the heirs of Somerled, the King of the Isles, or Lord of the Isles. They produced Clan Donald, Clan Ranald, And many other clans would spring off of that too from their sons, such as, Clan MacDougall and so forth. Clan MacTavish. So Clan MacTavish is originally the MacGilly-Thomas kindred, as before, and descendant of the kings of Gaul and Ergol, and the chiefs of Rossgill and Ross Ergol in Ireland. King Nuada was last inaugurated royal descendant of this tribe of Picts. Died in 718 to 722. They were the blood part of the Ulster Picts Confederation, and with a relationship or treaty with Clan Colla, and probably marriaged into Clan Colla. And now Clan Colla, to me, this is the existence of the clans of Scotland. The chiefs aligned with the O'Neills of Northern Ireland, many migrated to Scotland, probably became supporters of Godfrey MacFirvis, and they would have settled Scotland probably in the age of the Norse when they ruled over the Isles. So very fascinating history, and there's a tense relationship with Khan's of 100 Battles and his descendants with the descendants of Nall of the 9 Hostages. And maybe this is why the kingship in Tyrconnell ended with the descendants of the Boer kings leaving what is now Donegal and traveling to the kingdom of Dalriada into the area what is now known as Argyll. But this would be the line of the people of MacTavish. This would be the line of our people. And this, if you haven't bought the book, that was, buy it. I would love one day for it to be come out in hard copy, because I would purchase it. But for right now, I think the only way to get it is like I have it, and that's through a digital copy that you can read on your Kindle. History of Clan MacTavish by Patrick Thompson. And he did a wonderful job with this book, and you get a lot of the history of Scotland. And I want to do another. This is really giving you the overview of our name's origin, which is a devout supporter of Saint Thomas, and the name becomes MacGilly Thomas, and then would come into meaning MacTavish. So that's the root of our name. It's this Irish Pict name that comes from this area of Tyrconnell in Donegal, and then migration over into Scotland, into Argyll, during the time of the Kingdom of Dalriada. And we are descendants of Khan of 100 Battles. And let's just face it, we're probably descendants of all the nine, of Nell of the 9 Hostages as well, because of the intermarriages, and then the other peoples that would come from Ireland over the years in Ulster that would settle in Scotland later on. But anyways, this is just the basic foundation of the family and our lineage, as why we have the boar crest in the MacTavish clan badge in the family crest. And it comes down to where Tavish comes out again within our race, and that would be through Colum Malmouth's marriage to Sween the Red's daughter that would produce Tavish. And from Tavish's line, and we're talking about this is sometime in the 1100s, this is also would be the time that the Normans would start having influence with Norman feudalism and the surname system in Scotland, and it would grow into Clan MacTavish. So fascinating stuff. I would recommend getting this book if you have not, don't own it already, because it gives you a lot of great history. I think the next time we're going to go back through more of Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 and dig down into deeper levels of the family's history with its connection to the Picts and Gaels and to Khan of 100 Battles. As always, keep keep learning, keep studying, keep researching your family's history, whether you belong to the MacTavish family or you belong to another family or clan. It's fascinating. Dig deep, especially with your surname, your maternal surname or your paternal surname. Dig deep. You can actually find a lot of stuff that would go back several centuries. We're blessed to have such history of our family and clan that would reach back to, we're talking about in time periods of 500-600 AD, 700 AD, all the way even back further with Khan of 100 battles. But as always, keep diligent and stay safe. Thanks for watching my channel. I am Jonah MacTavish-Slaton, and God bless.